While the United States Senate this week rejected even the most modest effort to control gun ownership by rejecting a measure to require more stringent background checks for gun purchases, in Kansas this week, Governor Brownback signed a new measure into law that will allow teachers to carry concealed weapons in their classrooms. Supporters of the concealed carry bill argue teachers or employees with concealed weapons could stop attacks by gunmen more quickly than law enforcement. And while it didn't ask for the new law, the Kansas Association of School Boards didn't object because the final decision would be left to local school boards. Rural school districts complained it can take up to 30 minutes for police to respond. One Shawnee Mission teacher told lawmakers she feels like a sitting duck. Is this a fair compromise that a local school board can decide whether to allow this or not, Bill Grady?
Well, I think most local school boards would say absolutely, because these teachers should have the same rights that many citizens do. And of course, in Kansas, you can apply for and be trained for and get a concealed carry permit. And so why shouldn't teachers be able to do the same thing, provided that the Attorney General has not said you can't carry a weapon into the structure?
Some people argue, will there be any training, though, for these teachers, Stacey?
Well, and I think that's the real crux. How much training will there be? We saw in Missouri, there's a school district now that allows teachers to carry there, and it's going to be a bit more of training, even mental health background checks into the individuals or teachers who will carry. So I think that becomes the crux of this issue. When the districts, if they do, pass their own rules and regulations allowing an employee, whether it be a teacher or a janitor or a principal, to carry, what type of training are they going to have? And I think that's paramount for parents, because if I have a student in one of these classes, A, I want to know if the teacher has a concealed weapon, and I want to know what type of training they've had. I also want to know if there's been a mental health background screening. I don't believe that the law specifically spells that out. Will the districts have the ability to actually pass the types of rules and regulations for training that should be required? Because it needs to be more, to be honest with you, Nick, than just simple firearms training. It needs to be tactical as well.
My understanding is that there is no requisite above and beyond what the average citizen has to have now. And
which is 8 hours.
It's 8 hours. You do have to go on the range. You have to fire a certain amount of rounds at different distances. But it is not, as Stacey said, it does not involve tactical training.
Okay, but one of the things when it comes to a state trying to pass a law, Dave Helling, is that there is a major split, though, between urban and rural areas. And if you're in a rural area, there is a major difference between trying to get police to come or law enforcement to actually get to an area than when you're in an urban setting.
Right, no question about that, which is why the local option is critical, Nick. Another bill Governor Brownback signed this week, which may have gone unnoticed, is a bill that is passing in a lot of states, which in essence exempts the state of Kansas from any federal gun laws whatsoever, which of course, as we've talked about around this table, is likely to be very unconstitutional. But the statement from the state legislature to Washington was basically, you can't tell us what to do. And there was great resistance at the local level for, in essence, the state telling local governments what to do. So this idea that somehow the school boards have the ultimate say was probably essential to getting that bill passed and for its acceptance in the state of Kansas as well.
The prickly issue of gun ownership forced one of Missouri's highest-ranking officials to resign this week. Missouri Department of Revenue Director Brian Long, who had only held the job since December, handed in his resignation to the governor this week, writing, "My brief tenure as director has taken a toll on me and my family that I could not have anticipated. The department has been in hot water for releasing concealed gun permit information that was then turned over to the federal government, a move that prompted Missouri Republicans to complain of a breach of public trust and confidence in which gun owners' privacy rights had been violated and state laws broken. Lawmakers were even looking to pursue criminal charges against Long and other state officials involved. But why was the Department of Revenue processing concealed gun permit information in the first place? Bill?
Well, this is one of those huge situations where somebody tripped up. No one really knows why this information was ever released. Now, because ultimately gun ownership and concealed carry in Missouri is authorized by the Sheriff's Department. How it got to the Social Security Administration, no one knows. But then the backpedal was, well, we couldn't open the files anyway because some sort of a computer format difference.
Stacey.
Well, it looks like the Social Security Administration was doing an investigation into fraud, where they were concerned there were individuals who had claimed that they had disability and possibly mental disabilities. And if they had applied for a gun permit, concealed permit in Missouri, and they had a mental health problem, they shouldn't have gotten the permit, or or they were actually faking the disability. So the Social Security Administration wanted a copy of those records to go back and essentially cross-check these people who claim that they have a disability because of a mental deficiency. Are they not claiming that on their gun permits? And that's been part of the reason that it's been forwarded. But it's a huge privacy issue. Even if that's truly the reason they were turned over, let's step away from the guns. Let's see that you've got these identifying informations of people in Missouri that the Highway Patrol or the Department of Revenue is turning over to the federal government. And I think that is really the crux of the issue that people should be concerned. Missouri officials say they don't believe they've broken any laws, but lawmakers in Jefferson City, Republicans anyway, tend to believe differently.
And this is why this became a national story too, and it was picked up at a national level, Dave Helling, because that was also one of the concerns at the national level about the background checks to begin with.
Right.
What was going to happen to that information?
Right, and that is an issue and has been an issue with concealed carry debates across the country because, in essence, the people who support concealed carry permitting are adamant that once those permits are issued, they should stay secret from just about everybody. I remember when I was at Channel 5, we did a story as this was coming to Missouri and got some video from Utah and showed a few copies of permits in which the name was legible and the phones rang off the hook. No one should know this. That always seems a little counterproductive to me, but it's clearly a part of the debate. And I think Missouri lawmakers thought they had taken care of it by, in essence, prohibiting dissemination of this information, which is why it's blown up in the state and really across the country.
Well, and it's important to note the Department of Revenue, it's not only the concealed permit applications that they have scanned, it's also other documents that come in with driver's licenses, such as birth certificates. Now, why did the Department of Revenue have it? Because some people want to have their concealed permission also included as an endorsement on their license. So that's how the Department of Revenue actually had this information. But it's not only the applications. I mentioned again, it's other personal documents that have been scanned by the Department of Revenue and kept for investigative purposes, they say, such as